Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Eric Hecker. Before I bring him on, I want to remind you to subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on Odyssey. We're always available on all popular podcast platforms, and check us out on Rokfin, where you get all of our premium content. You also get all our regular shows for free, and you get all the premium content from every content creator on Rokfin. I also want to tell you how you can keep your private data to yourself with next-generation security. NordVPN protects your internet traffic with cutting-edge security technologies, ensuring strong and reliable encryption between your device and a VPN server. You can also browse without a trace. NordVPN is based away from the EU and US jurisdictions and has no obligation to collect your personal information. That means they don't record, monitor, store, log, or share anything you do. Just click the link in the description and you can get up to 70% off a 1 or 2 year plan. Tonight I want to welcome Eric Hecker. He is a self-educated research investigator that takes from his many odd life experiences and connects with others. His childhood included being part of the Stargate project, and later on he had experiences in the submarine service. In 2010, he took a contract to work at the South Pole Station for a year, and as an avid researcher, it was not until he began working remotely throughout the state of Alaska that he started making connections, that his own life may not have been what he thought it was. Now he is trying to help others see that things may not be as we're told. Eric, welcome. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic today, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Another fascinating guest with a fascinating background. And of course, you know, we're going to have to discuss one of the things I mentioned in your bio, which is that you were a part of the Stargate project as a child. Please tell us everything. And in what time frame did this occur?
That would have been... at the onset, I guess, would have been early grammar school years. I would imagine from kindergarten up. So that would have been approximately 1980, 81-ish would have been the inception, I imagine, of the program. And it was the Monroe Institute type situation where they were getting into the remote viewing and the training thereof and the mental practices around it. I have recollections of them administering eye drops to us, which I do know now was at the very least unbeknownst to my father. So he was unaware that this was happening to me in the school, and a lot of folks don't know that that was part of the program. I have spoken with other people behind the scenes that have given me some indications that they actually are telling me they believe that there was acid in those eye drops. And the effect, what I could tell you is they would give it to us before a session. And I remember we had school uniforms. It was a Catholic school. So we would sit down and the attendant would, have you tilt your head back, and they would put a napkin in the corner of your eye. Whatever the eye drop was, I remember them giving us warning. They'd say, stay still, don't move. You can't get it on your uniform, like it would stain or something like that. And I assure you, being a Catholic school kid, you knew not to stain the uniform that your parents spent good money on. So you listened to what you were told, you stayed still, the eye drops went in, and I was under the presumption at the time that my parents were aware of this. I mean, they sent me to school, and I had no reason to think that this was not approved. I mean, I'm a kid. My parents sent me to school. This is what I do. They pulled me out of class. They sent me to the library. I lean back. They put eye drops in my eyes, and they run me through a regimen, a program, training, schooling, as far as I know. And then upon completing that daily regimen, I remember that I would rush out of the library. Like there was like a closing process, a debrief or whatever, like a shutdown. And then I was always like anxious to hurry up, let's go, because the eye drops are going to wear off. And if I got out of the library before the eye drops wore off, the building faced south. And this was, I guess it would have been sunny all the time, but for some reason I feel like it was the afternoon, like it was a lot of sun. But if I left the library fast enough, the whole front lobby area was massive windows. And all of the light coming in from the effect of the eye drops, it was like wearing yellow lensed glasses. And I noticed that as a child. Like I was like, wow, look, this is cooler than this is cool as hell. Like I can walk out of the lobby and look around, and it's like I have like weirdo vision, you know. But then it would wear off.
That is extremely strange. Now, otherwise, from your childhood, was it a normal childhood? Was there any other strange memories that you have?
I'm constantly putting things together. So yes, I have tons of strange memories that I am trying to make sense of. That's it's part and parcel of why I started the website. Is just that so much of my life, when I do discuss things to people in my proximity, they're like, "Oh wow, you should write a book. You should tell everybody everything that you know." And it's like, I'm not a writer. It's just not my thing. So like, where do I even begin with that? Like, oh, what am I going to do? Sit down for the next 5 years and figure myself out, so to say, and then put it in book form? Like I'm supposed to just pull that off? I can't do that. I mean, I'm happy to talk to people about who I am and what my experiences are, but thank goodness for technology in some capacities, as it does allow us to just do that in real time. Because I think there's benefit to that, especially nowadays. I do think we need this. I think this is a crisis moment. I don't have time to publish books and for people to sit down and read it and then wait years for them to discuss what I know.
Yes, it is a very important time that we're living in right now, and I do want to discuss that a bit later. Now, as far as your childhood, and what did your parents do? Was there like military involvement or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was I'm generationally Navy. My father was Navy. My grandfather was Navy. My great grandfather was a merchant mariner. I mean, it's in the blood, and they say that these things matter. I'm learning more and more that it's apparently true. Whether I yield to the importance of bloodlines, I have to respect that there are other people on this planet that function with that respect for bloodlines, regardless of my opinion.
That is very true. Now, also, it says in your bio that you later had experiences in the submarine service. Now, what could you be more specific? What was that?
That's in 1994, I took a contract with the United States Navy to be a submariner, and this is also, it goes back to these programs because I believe someone like yourself, Chris, can step back and take more of a big picture look at these things. The job that I was contracted for was what they call a fire control technician, and it's a deceptive term because people like oftentimes would think like, oh, he must have been a firefighter. No, it means weapon systems. It's the launch controls. A fire control technician is the fire control. It's the fire panel for launching the munitions of a submarine. So I was being trained to effectively launch up to and including potentially nuclear-tipped munitions. In my deciphering of my experience, I am coming to believe that the United States Navy isn't waiting for an 18-year-old to volunteer for this position of importance. I think that training starts earlier off in life through nefarious programs. I simply think that when they put someone in a chair and they want that person to, without pause, launch a munition that could potentially kill millions of people, they need to make sure that person has that mindset. And they work towards it. They add intention and energy. And they make products. I mean, everybody knows that the military is making a product. I think the two-step is they think that they start making the product in the population when the product reaches 18 years old.
Yeah, that's I've heard that from others who have been involved in certain shadowy government factions as well, and eventually, just into the military somehow. Now, do you have any other memories from young childhood or teenage years of anything kind of similar to your experience with the eye drops or anything like that?
I once had a section of my jawbone replaced in my teenage years where I have no idea why, but it was, I was, again, told by one of my parental units that it needed to be done. I was getting braces at the time, and I was told a section of my jawbone needed to be replaced and had a cadaver section installed instead.
Very interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I found that to be out of the ordinary.
And you
It's
never
like, oh,
found out
my never gave me a problem before.
and you never found out what it was for?
No idea.
Huh. Very interesting. Now, did you
Yeah.
have, growing up or at any time, any type of unexplained paranormal experiences or UFO sightings or strange occurrences of that nature?
I actually was just speaking recently with Ryder Lee about this behind the scenes because he's, I guess, a confidant at this point. We've connected rather well behind the scenes. And recently, I was listening to Penny Bradley had Peter Moon on, and they were discussing some Montauk stuff. And I am from Long Island, and I have a lot of issues with Montauk in my background. And I always think of the movie Forrest Gump where he says, it's funny the things that you remember, and it's funny the things that we forget as well, right? So even with all the stuff that I've been deciphering and trying to figure out, it just dawned on me the other day. I don't know, like when you went to high school and you guys did senior prom, did you make an event out of it, like senior prom weekend? Would you go somewhere for the weekend?
Well, probably just for the night. I don't know about the weekend.
Okay. And where we came from, the tradition was everybody went away for the weekend, and that was senior prom weekend, and it was a big to-do.
I can see that, though. We probably did something
So
along those lines.
it just dawned on me last week after hearing this and considering some of my past. I'm like, oh, wow. I did my senior prom weekend at Montauk. And I was like, wow, I need to really think about what that means. And I started to think back about that, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah. And then there was that night at the beach with the thing in the water. And I totally had forgotten that we had like a UFO event on the beach at Montauk my senior prom weekend. I was kind of flipping out. I called up Ryder. I'm like, we need to talk. I'm like, holy cow! Yeah, it was a big deal. We had a large portion of my senior class there in 1993, which 93 is a important number in a lot of circles. So again, getting into that whole ritualism thing and looking at my graduating class in 93 per se, having its ritualistic ceremonial completion at Montauk, it started really making my brain going, man, this is getting really complex.
Now,
I did see something on the water there. That one of the nights that we were there, something did come across like the surface of the water. It wasn't high at all. We had considered it to be a boat at first, but it was acting unlike any other boat in the area because it was getting closer and closer to shore. It was extremely low gunwale, like there was not a lot of boat above the surface of the water, which makes no sense when you're talking about a seafaring vessel. I mean, you want more boat in case it would look like the water could come right over it. But it also looked huge, like almost like a football field size. So we were thinking barge, and it had what looked like two large posts that came up and had giant balls of light on it, which we were thinking at the time was just like masts and lights. But then the rest of the lights, nothing really made sense at all. And in actuality, as we just sat there watching it get closer, it just became more peculiar because it kept getting closer and closer. And there's absolutely no reason for a vessel to shore there. And at the point where it looked like it was about to come to shore was my last recollection of the evening. I woke up in the morning laying on a piece of driftwood, slunched down, and there was two little girls throwing seashells and sand at me and chuckling and laughing, messing with the passed out teenager on the beach. As I wake up and my eyes are coming to, and I see the mother running from behind them, running towards them, like, get away from him, get away, which is totally understandable. I must look like a mess on the beach. And then I proceeded to just get up and walk back to the house that we were renting up the road.
Wow, that is very interesting. Now, are you doing anything to kind of consciously regain any of these memories, any kind of regression sessions or anything like that?
I haven't done, well, I don't know if it's, see, everybody calls things by different titles, so it's hard for me to say, but
hypnotherapy, anything like that?
I'm working, I would say I'm working with a healer is the term that I use, because I find it comfortable. But she calls it life force energy therapy. And that's the word she likes. All I can say is that in her proximity, I have been privy to the fact that she has a skill set that's amazing. To have the experience of somebody to walk around in your head, so to say, like it's an office full of filing cabinets and rifle through your files, and you can observe it, is a very interesting phenomenon. So I respect that there's a lot of things going on in the world around me that I can't prove to anybody, but I can still experience. So I experience help from folks in many different ways. I couldn't prove that function to anybody else ever, But I am getting folks that are making connections for me, and I know to a lot of other people it would sound absurd, I guess, but I've walked a different life. I mean, life is weird for most people if they look at it, and I don't even know that most people have walked a very weird life. I mean, I've turned some stones that it's just like at this stage of the game, like folks are right. Like I should have wrote a book, but that's not what I do.
Right, yeah, and when you look at your own life, I'm sure for most people, it's a lot weirder than they've observed if they really take a close look at what's going on, because reality's a lot weirder than it appears most times. So
Yep.
now in your bio, you wrote that you were a plumber for the richest family in Long Island. Is that what you wrote?
Families.
Families. Okay. Now, was that a coincidence, or do you think by design somehow?
I think there's some. I believe there was some sort of push in a lot of the things that I did. That through the programs that I was in, these families were extremely well off, and I do not think. I mean, as weird as this might sound, I don't think when their toilet breaks, when their garage door breaks, when their light goes out, they're not going to the local yellow pages to call a tradesman. Everybody that steps foot on that property has to be in some sort of approved situation. And they have to get approved somehow. And I don't know all the machinations of it, but it just becomes apparent when you see who these people are. I mean, I've literally been in the master bathroom of multiple homes where, this is the 90s and stuff like that. Like, you got to remember, pre-internet. Bathrooms had, in well-to-do homes, bathrooms had built-in magazine racks next to the toilet that were very gorgeous. And in these hoity-toity bathrooms, I would find Council on Foreign Relations monthly, Trilateral Commission quarterly. Like, these are heavy-hitting knuckleheads. They don't just have anybody step foot on the property ever.
That is very interesting. Now, do you have any idea? You said you don't know what kind of mechanisms would have caused them to choose you, but any maybe theories or thoughts? What you think? Maybe it's the fact that you were in the military family and that was involved in some of these projects.
I do believe that one of my relatives actually put me into one of the programs. So I do believe that was how I got in, and through, I guess, doing well in the programs, I became programmed well for a period, and that got me on an approved list. I had a skill set which was plumbing and heating, and I was adept at you name it. I mean, the East Coast, the New England area is, as far as a depth of trade skill goes, you have to have a skill set there. You're working in homes that are 3 years old. You're working in homes that are 300 years old. There's a depth of skill that's required, and a lot of the affluent mansions took a special skill set. To be working on a 100-year-old vapor vacuum steam system in a 72-room mansion is not your average service call.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so.
So they needed folks like me to be able to fix their ancient tech, I guess you would say, that someone still had to do it. I had the aptitude to do it, and I guess I made it through the programs that made me not a threat.
That is very interesting. Now, after your submarine service and working, as a plumber for these various families, what did you do then? Was it at this point that you went to the South Pole?
Yes, it was. I'd gotten to the point where I had my own plumbing, heating, and service company in New York, and around the 2008 period when the economy started tanking, I was not as adept at business to go against the whole economy crashing. So I started looking for other work, and I wound up getting contracted to go to the South Pole Station as a plumber. And I took that contract it was early November of 2010, and I returned again in early November of 2011. Effectively, I spent 366 days consecutively on the Antarctic continent.
Oh, that's cool. Now, first tell us, how was your trip out there? How did you get out there? And, was it rough seas or anything? Did it have an easy trip?
It was flights. It was relatively simple. The only delay in game was weather delays when we had gotten ourselves to Christchurch, New Zealand, and that was kind of typical for the time of the season that I was going. So we eventually got into a C-17, which took us from Christchurch, New Zealand, to McMurdo, which is on Ross Island, which is slightly off the coast, packed into the sea ice, and then I spent less than 24 hours in McMurdo, probably less than 12 hours, and we jumped onto what they call a C-130, a Herc, and that brought us all the way south to 90 degrees at South Pole, and I stayed there for what they call a summer season and a winter season, which effectively, a lot of folks don't know, which is celestially, it's 1 day. So the entire time that I was present at the South Pole Station, the geographic pole, you watch the sun go up once and down once. That's it. Now, it'll go around the horizon a lot because you're still spinning. But yeah, it's 1 day.
Wow.
I spent a day there.
That's really cool. Now, were you able to get out and about and do any exploration while you were out there?
Absolutely. Yep. I was contracted as a plumber, but effectively I was on what they call the UT staff, utility technicians. So it basically just meant all of the tradesmen. So we worked very much as a collective team. We all would in the morning meet, and I would have certain PMs or work orders that I would have to go take a look at that were specific to my trade, and as would each of the other tradesmen. But then there was a whole bunch of stuff that we would just have to go look at, go do rounds and just check on. And we would do that stuff as a team. So we would take like zones each day and distribute them out. So depending on who got distributed what, at any point in time, I had liberty to go wherever I wanted. I had a key to open every single door. And I used everything with great liberty. I had no problem checking everything that I could while I was there.
That's cool. Now, what are some of the most interesting experiences you had while you were at the South Pole? Anything, and did you find anything anomalous or strange while you were there, or heard any stories of anything that happened to anyone else while you were there?
I could go on forever when you put it that way. when you just tack on any stories from anyone else.
Let's use the most profound or anomalous ones.
Yeah, one time when I was walking back from what they call the dark sector, which is where the South Pole Telescope is, the Ice Cube Neutrino Detector, and another detector facility they call MAPO. And they call it the dark sector because it's radio dark. We're not allowed to transmit with our handheld radios when we're out there. It'll interfere with the science that they're doing. But one time I was returning from the dark sector, and it was relatively stormy, if I recall correctly. Nothing crazy, but I was, I guess, checking the storminess because it doesn't really snow that much at the South Pole. There's not a lot of precipitation coming down. The snow that's coming is moving from the winds laterally, and if the snow is blowing hard enough, it'll make a stratospheric layer where it's just it could be from your knees down to the ground, blowing like a river, but you can't even see your feet. Or sometimes it gets up so high where it's whiting out to like just above your head, where if you look around, everything's white out, but if you look up, you can still see the sky. So sometimes you look up just to see if you have better orientation. So on this particular day, I was walking back to the facility, and it was, I guess, one of those times I was just checking. I was looking up for no reason. And across the entirety of the sky, which is, there's no obstructions. There's nothing there, no mountains or anything. There's this massive, what I thought at the time was like a giant meteor, but it was so huge. It was like this giant fireball. And I could see it going across over the elevated station towards what we would call grid south as far as directions go. And it was moving so fast, but it was like as if any point in time, it was like it was taking up like where the ball was with the flaming tail section was taking up like 1/3 of the sky, it seemed like. And it was moving across at such a rate, and it had this large smoking trail. And I remember when it went like across what would be like dead center of my view, I remember like being able to see what looked like the flames like rippling and furling around it. Like that's how big and close and descript. But then it continued all the way off. So it went from complete grid north, as our direction bears, all the way across the elevated station, straight as an arrow, completely off and into the horizon, and it never went into the ground. At the time, I wrote it off as a meteor just because I didn't really know. But since then, in reconsidering it, the fact that it took that straight course and never went down, I have to consider that it was a controlled course that it chose and maintained, which now just brings my mind into it was an object that was flying and I can't identify it, so it's a UFO. Is what it is.
Right. Now, did anyone else see this? Did you have anyone else to kind of compare?
No one else saw it.
Wow.
I remember when I walked inside. Saying it. I told the facilities engineer what I saw. And I just simply asked. I remember asking, like, is there anyone looking for this stuff? Like, I just saw this thing. Are we tracking stuff like that? And is there anyone that can tell me what I just saw out there? And he gave me a recommendation of someone to go ask, and I don't even remember if I did or not. I don't think that I did. I think I just sloughed it off as like, nobody's looking at anything.
Right. That's very interesting. Yeah, I've actually seen something very similar to that before, like a controlled type of meteor before. But I just wrote it off as a meteor too, because I thought maybe it just somehow could have changed directions. I don't know, but it was just like a one-time thing, and I hadn't thought about it, really since. But that's very interesting. Now,
part of me is very curious too about the actual. I don't know the dimension of their field of vision because we are at 9,300 feet of elevation, and it's a complete plateau. So to consider the distance of what I was looking to my left to how far the horizon is, and then to consider how far to the right, like that's a really broad field, and to consider how fast that went across in a straight line, it's like that's wild.
That is. Now, did you have any other experiences that to speak of that happened to you while you were there?
Well, I did just disclose some facts that I found out about the facility recently, and that is that the detector, the ice cube neutrino detector over in that dark sector, which according to its primary mission, it's supposed to be a passive device that as a neutrino enters this detector array and makes contact with the nucleus of a water molecule. That contact makes a reaction where it ejects what is now called a muon, which is a different particle, and it also makes a blue flash. And that flash of light is what is being detected by what they call a DOM. I believe it's a digital optical monitor or module. I forget what the M is for. I always get it jammed up in my head. But it's called a DOM. And they have these things embedded in the ice. And there's 5,160 of them. I recently produced a document that shows that not only does this device do the passive job as we're told, but it also has a power output per dom at about 2,000 some odd volts per dom. And when you multiply that by 5,160 doms, you're now looking at what is probably some sort of a phased array, similar to HARP.
Interesting.
Extremely interesting.
Yeah. Any ideas of what they could be using that for?
I have a lot of ideas of what they could be using it for, but that would be speculating. I'm trying to get facts on things. The fact of the matter is it also transmits. I am totally looking into finding out what that can mean specifically. On the list of things that it can mean, I've started looking into the science of the field and what it could possibly mean. It could mean that they are doing communications. It could mean that they are manipulating the atmosphere. It could mean that they're manipulating the terrasphere. It could mean, according to some uses of types of science in this capacity, it could mean that they're doing some sort of radiation mitigation. These are all lists of things that these types of technologies can be applied to. And the oddity, this is where it gets into compartmentalization being dangerous, because what we have to look at this device is it's a component now. We have to look at all the things that this thing can do, and then we actually have to look at it as a component, because people go, well, what can it do? Well, it can do this, this, and this by itself. What if you connect it to this? Oh, well, when you connect it to that, those two components together can do this, this, and this. And now we have to find out if they're even doing that. And this is how they spread things apart to make it very challenging for people to figure out that this component in this state, and this component in this continent, and this component that's floating out at sea are actually working together. And how long it's going to take people to figure out that these components are working together when politicians change seats every 4 years?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the left hand will never know what the right hand's doing, and that's how they're going to keep everything secret.
If they make it a process that takes 20 years for you to figure it out through a processing seat that rotates every 4 years, guess what? You're never going to accomplish the mission. And I would see this at local level politics in townships. When you see a township mess something up so terribly that the local population is suffering for it, they know all they have to do is kick the can down the road for 4 years.
Now,
that's all they do.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the theories of the mysterious projects and things that could be going on in Antarctica.
Absolutely.
And you've mentioned what you found. What are your thoughts on some of the other anomalous things that have been mentioned, like underground structures, pyramids, spaceships under the ice, Nazi bases where they have reverse engineered technology, even whole antediluvian civilizations in some parts of Antarctica? I mean, the theories can get out there. What do you think is most probable or possible?
Wow. Well, for starters, I come from the direction of all possibility exists always. So I do not find this stuff crazy in the slightest. I've been there. It's a wacky continent ripe for abuse. I mean, straight up, there's the amount of secrecy that is involved, the lack of eyes and boots on ground makes it a place where folks need to pay more attention to. They are getting away with things. That's my opinion. I can speak for my experience, and it's a shady program.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And there's such a huge no-fly zone over Antarctica, it makes you wonder what the hell could be going on in some of those areas, especially with the old Nazi bases where they definitely have proof that there was, they have them in existence, like New Schwabenland and places like that. But what were they doing there? What kind of materials were they working with? Were they reverse engineering things? All very interesting questions, and I think that
there seems to be a lot of evidence. There seems to be tons of evidence for a German presence down there, both during and post World War II, also in South America. there was a gentleman, John Warner IV, that I had on my show a couple of times, and he's a bit of a historian and researcher in that direction. And his father was also Senator John Warner, who was involved. He was leadership for Majestic 12 and Operation High Jump down in Antarctica, and he disclosed that his father disclosed to him about the secret submarine bases, and that they would use steam drill systems to make the tunnels, which would be similar to how they made the ice cube neutrino detector embed into the ice using steam drills and stuff like that. This is Antarctic tech. I mean, it's actually really easy to get the ice out of your way. This is the con game between what the people see and what people there know. Like, I've been there, folks. This is reality. Okay. You guys watch the news and you watch science, and they say things like, "Oh, it's going to take us years to drill through the ice. It's 2 miles thick." That's a lie. It's a total lie. It's actually really easy to get minus 60-degree ice out of your way. It's called steam and a pump. The ice is completely expanded at almost maximum volume because of the 0% humidity in Antarctica. So you're getting water to expand at almost its maximum rate. So a chunk of ice in Antarctica is like styrofoam. It doesn't even hurt. I could take a 3-foot by 3-foot block of ice in Antarctica and smash it on your head, and you would laugh because it has almost no density or mass.
That's interesting.
So with that, it's extremely interesting. Antarctica is backwards. Everything's backwards there. So when they start with the steam drill and they drop it down into the ice, as it starts to melt that ice, it makes a huge cavity because that ice turns into very little water. And then it just starts to collect as they go down with the steam drill. And obviously the condensation from the drill itself, the steam that's coming out, will turn into water. But then they just have a submersible pump that pulls it up and evacuates it out. It's easy peasy.
Something else I've always been fascinated ever since I found out about Antarctica is the amount of underwater volcanoes that are underneath Antarctica. There's like 91 or 92 volcanoes. That's crazy.
What they refer to as the West Antarctic Ice Shelf is pretty much volcanoes, and they're very active right now. A lot of folks don't know that. That has a lot to do with the calving of the ice in Antarctica. A lot of people like discussing the pseudoscience around Antarctica, and oh, look, the ice is falling off. It's melting. It's bad. The planet's getting destroyed from global warming. Well, sorry, but since 2010, when I stepped foot on that continent, I've been paying very close attention, and the overall temperatures for the continent of Antarctica have been dropping. It's getting colder and colder every year, which causes the glaciers to grow or accrete or move forwards. All of the glaciers in Antarctica are pushing out onto the sea. So it's like a lip. They can only go out so far before they can no longer sustain their own weight. They lose their own structure. So the ice falling off Antarctica right now is proof that the glaciers are healthy and growing so much and just pushing off and snapping. But they're misrepresenting the information. It's disinformation. They're presenting it the opposite of reality.